The next morning, Freya came to the castle to apologize. She admitted to initiating the competition, but claimed that Isaac's frightening reaction had forced her to lie. Her remorse for Ruby seemed faint. Her acting skills were truly masterful. Ruby glared at her with disgust. Apologize? As if, Ruby thought. If you were truly sorry, you'd tell the truth, even if it's late. Why say these things only when we're alone? Still, on the surface, Ruby had to appear magnanimous. Miss Freya, you didn't know things would turn out this way. Don't worry about it. Freya continued to feign guilt, and Ruby forced a bright smile. I'm really fine, I even enjoyed it. Got to admire the beautiful scenery of Arundel up close, Ruby said, her tone light but biting. Freya was momentarily taken aback, but quickly regained her composure. She took Ruby's hand and offered her full support should she need anything in the future. Ruby knew that to Freya she was an insignificant obstacle. She didn't know what she had done to upset her, but it was clear no one would believe her over Freya. The irony was that the only person who had listened to Ruby was her husband, the same man who was destined to murder her. Later, Elle came to inform Ruby about plans for a birthday party for her brother. Just proceed with what I asked you to do, Elle instructed. Ruby scratched her head in embarrassment. Elle wasn't wrong. Given the current situation, she was probably already on everyone's blacklist. Going out there now would only make people hate her more. Elle would be too busy to help until the day of the party, so she had the servants prepare everything Ruby would need in advance. The mere mention of the servants gave Ruby a headache. Though they had pretended to care for her not long ago, once her husband went into seclusion, they began to treat her with contempt. The servants ignored her, despite saying she should ring the bell if she needed anything. When Ruby did, they would take their time arriving, often with indifferent attitudes. Fortunately, Ruby had bribed Lucille before and was still receiving her help. What Ruby needed to focus on now was improving Isaac's opinion of her. After some thought, she remembered the bedside table. Luckily, what she needed was still in the cupboard. She took out a needle and thread set, planning to embroider something for Isaac's birthday. She hadn't noticed when a maid had entered the room until she suddenly spoke, asking if Ruby knew how to sew. Ruby didn't even recall summoning her. With a polite smile, Ruby replied, I'm just imitating someone else's embroidery. She even pretended not to know what to embroider. The maid immediately suggested a willow tree pattern, mentioning that Isaac often climbed a willow tree as a child, but it had been cut down, and now he missed it dearly. Ruby forced a bright smile, thanking her for the suggestion. After the maid left, Ruby's smile faded. She wasn't sure of the specific reasons behind Duchess Om's tragic death, but one scene stood out vividly in her memory. The Duchess had hanged herself from a willow tree. A willow tree? No way, Ruby thought. She was also certain this maid had been the one who extinguished the torch in her room during Isaac's last birthday. On Isaac's birthday, Ruby finally finished embroidering a sunflower design as a gift. She then took out pen and paper, intending to write a letter to him. However, before she could begin, a sharp pain surged through her stomach. Her period had arrived. Why today of all days? Ruby silently cursed. She reached for the bell beside her bed, using the last of her strength to ring it. Unfortunately, the person who came was the same wicked maid from the previous day. Seeing that Ruby was suffering from menstrual cramps, the maid coldly offered to bring her pain medication. The maid also announced, according to the young master, Madam is only allowed to stay in her room today. This meant Ruby wasn't expected nor permitted to attend the ceremony. The maid added, anyway, your health isn't very good, so it's probably for the best. If you want to send a message, I'll deliver it for you. A moment later, another maid arrived with medicine. Madam, I brought your pain medication. Although Ruby disliked it, she reluctantly took the medicine. Lucille, call Elle for me, please, Ruby requested. However, Lucille's response was disappointing. Miss has gone out. She'll be back when the party starts. I see. Thank you, Lucille. Lucille, noticing Ruby's appearance, felt a twinge of sympathy but couldn't do anything to help. Then I'll excuse myself, she said, leaving Ruby alone. Ruby lay in her room, her mind racing with Marta's earlier words. What should I do? Marta had promised to deliver Ruby's message, but could she really trust her? If Marta says I'm crazy, will she even give him my message? Ruby's thoughts spiraled. No matter how upset he is, telling me I can't attend his birthday party is absurd. But what if what the maid said is true? She tried to calm herself. If it's Isaac, it's possible. I want to believe it's not. But what if this is his way of completely severing his feelings for me? Time passed quickly, and soon it was almost 5 p.m. Ruby remained alone in her room, waiting anxiously, her confidence draining with each passing minute. This is too much. The party is about to start, and they must have told Anya that I'm not well and can't attend. It was true that Ruby wasn't feeling well, but she couldn't just sit there any longer. She needed to find a way to save herself. Hearing Ruby's bell, Lucille returned as instructed. "You called, madam?" Ruby, now with a determined smile, looked at the maid. "Can you help me? The party is about to start." "And I want to attend too," Ruby insisted. Lucille looked a little worried when she heard this. "But madam, I was told." Ruby interrupted the maid before she could finish. "Just help me change my clothes. I've been cooped up in this room for days and I feel so stifled. I just want to go out for a bit of fresh air and then I'll come back right away." As she spoke, Ruby discreetly handed Lucille a jewel as payment, her expression pitiful. "Please, Lucille." Lucille glanced at the jewel in her hand, confused by the unusual request. In the end, she couldn't resist Ruby's desperate look and agreed to help. "Madam, you can only stay for a little while and then you have to come back immediately." I know. I'll be right back," Ruby promised. At last, Ruby had the opportunity to deliver the letter where it needed to go. Her escape was successful, and she soon found herself standing in front of the palace doors, where the party was in full swing. "As a madam, I have to sneak around like a thief," she thought bitterly. "Okay, I just need to deliver the gift and head back, but what am I doing?" It seemed that fate was not on Ruby's side. Though the sky had been calm, a sudden clap of thunder echoed, followed by an unexpected downpour. Ruby could hardly believe her misfortune. Why did it have to rain right now? She cursed. Drenched and frustrated, she hurriedly checked the gift to see if it was damaged. As she fumbled with it, a voice suddenly rang out from nearby. "As expected, even the heavens know whose birthday it is today. Is it because it's the North's greatest night? Even the heavens must show respect." It was the chatter of the guests at the party. Ruby quietly peeked inside at the lively atmosphere, feeling even more out of place in her current state. "Why are they so happy?" Ruby thought to herself. "I worked so hard to prepare a gift for him, yet..." Looking at the gift bag in her hand, Ruby could only blame herself for being so naive. Just then, as if in answer to her thoughts, a familiar voice rang out. "It doesn't look like it was that hard." As she had guessed, the voice belonged to Isaac. He was chatting with the people inside, and a girl responded, "Koti Asli, how annoying. Do you really have to ignore someone's sincerity?" Another voice chimed in, "I told you, Mississippi, it's useless to treat this guy nicely." Ruby felt a pang of sadness as she watched Isaac laughing and talking happily with the guests around him, showing no sign of noticing her. "And I went through all that trouble to sneak out just to give him a gift." The door slowly opened, but along with it came Ruby's overwhelming sense of disappointment. "I don't blame anyone," she thought. "I just blame myself for being naive enough to put my heart into someone who doesn't care about me. Let's go back. I'm just an uninvited guest. Showing up like this would only be humiliating." It was all for nothing anyway. The gift was ruined. She glanced at the simple, crumpled gift bag, damaged by the rain. Unconsciously, she compared it to the elaborate gifts Isaac had received from the young ladies at the party. No comparison, no pain, she thought bitterly. But the more she compared, the more she felt sorry for herself. How could I give him this? Having just been caught in the rain and chilled by the cold night wind, Ruby involuntarily sneezed. The raindrops were gradually subsiding, and she looked up at the sky, noticing that the clouds were beginning to clear. But when she glanced around, she was struck by confusion. In her sadness, Ruby had wandered aimlessly, unaware of where she was headed. But where am I? She wondered, suddenly feeling lost. Suddenly, a strong collision jolted Ruby, sending a sharp wave of pain through her shoulder. I thought my shoulder was broken, she panicked. Unsure of who had bumped into her, Ruby decided she had better run. She was about to leave when a voice called out, "Madam, are you all right?" It turned out the person who had collided with her was Lorenzo. Hearing his voice, Ruby froze. Then, with tears threatening to spill, she said something that took Lorenzo by surprise. "Just curse me as much as you want. I know you all hate me, so don't pretend like last time. You can curse me all you want." Her words left Lorenzo baffled. "Madam, what are you talking about?" he asked, clearly confused. But Ruby didn't believe him. She simply waited for the curses to come. "I may look like this, but I'm good at judging. I won't have any ambitions and will live quietly, like a dead mouse, so don't worry," she said between sobs. Realizing she was becoming emotional, Ruby quickly turned away to wipe her tears. "It hurts so much, that's why I'm crying," she told herself. But just as she turned, what she saw made her freeze in place. Right before her stood not only Ivan and Emian, but Isaac as well. The sudden appearance of the three men left Ruby stunned. She stood frozen for 5 full seconds as Isaac's stern gaze pierced through her. The moment she saw him, Ruby couldn't control the surge of emotions. Her face flushed with anger and tears welled up in her eyes. Where did they come from? She thought in a panic. What if Isaac gets angry because I left the room without permission? I can't lose face in front of Freya's brother. Without thinking, Ruby turned to run, but her dress was too cumbersome. She barely took 2 steps before stepping on the hem, causing her to fall flat on her face right in front of the 4 men. There was no greater humiliation. Ruby was too mortified to move, too embarrassed to even face them. This is so humiliating. Just then, a large figure approached. It was Isaac. To her surprise, he gently helped her up, his attitude soft and caring. "Hey," Isaac began, but Ruby was utterly terrified. Ruby hurriedly explained, "I'm sorry for leaving my room without permission. I just wanted to give you your present and then go back. I didn't intend to linger here at all." Isaac was surprised and puzzled by her words. "What are you talking about?" Ruby, trembling, continued, "I know you told me I didn't need to attend the party, but I still wanted to give you your gift." Her voice cracked and tears streamed down her face. Isaac's expression shifted to surprise. "What? Who said that?" Ruby was stunned. "I've been tricked," she thought. "That maid played me." But as she processed Isaac's denial, her face brightened. "So? You don't hate seeing me? I can give you my gift, right?" Her heart swelled with relief. Thank goodness, at least this... Just as she was about to take out the gift, Isaac suddenly grabbed her hand tightly. He looked directly into her eyes, a distressed expression on his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Before he could speak, a loud shout startled them both. "Damn it, Lorenzo, you've been whispering nonsense behind my back again, haven't you?" Ruby timidly peeked behind her and saw a chaotic scene unfolding. Lorenzo was desperately trying to explain. No, I didn't. I only did it once, I swear." Isaac looked furious. "You bastard. I told you what would happen if you dared to sing that song again." Hearing this, Ruby couldn't help but smile to herself. Even if he didn't mean to, it feels refreshing to see him get in trouble like this. Noticing Ruby's sudden interest in the conversation, Isaac's curiosity was piqued. He turned around and asked, "What song?" The 3 people who had been arguing and wrestling fell silent, their faces turning pale. No one dared to answer him. Isaac's voice grew stern. "I asked, what song?" Ruby suddenly recalled a conversation with one of the servants. "Oh, right. There was a servant who told me before. I'm new here. The previous servant caused some trouble and I replaced him." Ruby had asked at the time, what kind of trouble? He sang an obscene song in front of Lord Isaac, the servant had replied. Apparently that servant was fired because of the song, which explained why everyone had become so tense. Ruby sighed inwardly. As much as I want to see Lorenzo suffer for this. I don't want to hear that disgusting song again, Ruby thought, looking at the cold-faced man before her. Her heart filled with worry. I hope that song didn't reach Isaac's ears. Trying to divert his attention, Ruby cleverly sneezed. Seeing her like this, Isaac's expression softened with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, sounding heartbroken. It was the first time Ruby had ever seen him so warm towards her. Overcome with emotion, she blurted out, "You're such a caring person. Are you not angry anymore? You don't hate me, right?" Her words made Isaac blush, and he quickly looked away, trying to compose himself. With a steady voice, he gently helped her up and said, "Let's go inside." But Ruby suddenly remembered her soaked dress. Wait a minute. You're telling me to attend the party looking like this? As soon as they entered the hall, Ellen rushed over, her face full of concern. "Ruby, what happened?" Isaac replied curtly, "We'll talk later. Take her to change her clothes and then come back." In the dressing room, Ellen looked at Ruby and said, "The maid said you weren't feeling well and couldn't attend the party. When I left, you didn't look well either, so I thought you really couldn't come. What happened?" Without thinking, Ruby responded, "I feel much better now. It was just period cramps. I was told I didn't need to attend the party today, so..." Ellen's expression immediately darkened. "Ha! Who said that?" Ruby didn't need to answer. From the look on her face, Ellen already knew who it was. She sighed and shook her head dejectedly. "For now, let me get you some of the pain medication my brother uses." Ellen, still worried about Ruby being left alone, enthusiastically escorted her back to the main hall. "Ruby, try this," she said, offering her some food. "You haven't eaten anything all day." This concern made Ruby feel a little flustered. "Ellen keeps telling me to eat whenever she sees me. I'm really fine." Suddenly, a girl approached and asked, "Ellen, what's wrong? Isaac doesn't look very well." Ellen immediately went to check. "I don't know either, but let me go see. You stay here with Ruby."